So, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Power Hour 2025 series. We're so excited to have you with us for this third virtual forum, which is Rethinking Renewables and Regional Collaborations. Across Australia, the energy shift is reshaping regional communities and bringing both enormous opportunities and real challenges. As we know, these communities aren't just hosting the majority of the new infrastructure, they're also navigating social, economic, and environmental change. As the momentum builds, so does the need for us to engage more effectively and respectfully and in genuine partnership with the people at the heart of this transition. And we all know this is complex work. And while there's already lots of great practice out there, as Tony Ma reminded us in episode 19 of our Empower podcast, many communities still do feel that the transition is being done to them and not with them. And that's why we're here. This series is all about lifting the bar, sharing bold ideas and fresh perspectives alongside the real voices from the regions. We want to support you, challenge your thinking, and help shape better outcomes on the ground. And today we are diving into a topic that gets talked about a lot, but I don't know that many real examples that we can point to because collaboration is really, really hard. Bringing together key stakeholders from across a region that's undergoing massive disruptive change to work together to find collaborative solutions, it takes much more than goodwill. It takes courage, strong leadership, and structures to keep people at the table when things get tough. And that's exactly what we're here to explore today. I'm Wendy Agar from Engaged Outcomes, and I am super excited to be bringing you a real power hour today, 30 minutes of regional experts and awesomeness. From our keynote speaker, Chris Sounness, who's the CEO of the Wimmera Southern Mallee Development, through to our expert panel featuring Sabiene Heindl, the CEO of Energy Charter, and Colin Kemp, Community Engagement Manager for Westwind. Before we go any further, though, I'd like to acknowledge that I'm joining you today from the land of the Turrbal and Yagara people and acknowledge the land wherever you are calling in from today. I'd like to pay my respects to them, their culture, and to their elders past and present. Also, I have a really huge thank you to our 2025 series partners, PowerLink and WinLab, for believing in this work, sharing our vision, and backing these honest conversations about what it takes to partner with communities and stand alongside them in shaping a fairer future. At Engaged Outcomes, we're on a mission to improve how engagement is done in regional Australia, and we're really proud that this Power Hour series creates a space for real conversations, shared learning, and practical insight. Now, a little bit of housekeeping before we get going. I do need to let you know that we are recording this session and all the normal things, mute, please, cameras on, please. And this is really your learning experience, so don't be shy. Our speakers want to hear from you and they're desperately waiting for your questions. They are so excited to be able to share the work they've been doing, and part of that is you finding out the questions that are sitting with you. Now, we are using Zoom, so it's a little bit different to Teams, which most people are more familiar with. The taskbar is at the bottom with Zoom. So if you have a look along there, you'll see your chat box. I'd really like you to say hello and where you're calling in from, and maybe even pop a little emoji in to show how you're going today. And now I wait like I sometimes do. I almost need a little bit of elevator music. Hello, everyone. Hello, Steph. Wonderful that you're able to join us today. Hi, Lou. Welcome, Colin. Hi, Stevie, James, fantastic. Adelaide, Wurundjeri, Rockhampton. Welcome, everyone. I always enjoy looking later at where everyone is calling in from. South Gippsland, fantastic. We might get going because we've got such amazing presenters today, and as we always do, and a really meaty topic that we really do need to learn more about. So let's get started by welcoming Chris Sounness, who's our keynote today. Now, many of you probably already know Chris. He's pretty well known. He's the CEO of the Wimmera Southern Mallee Development, and he has spent decades working across agriculture, climate, and regional development, mostly trying to make things better by doing the stuff that gets talked about in plans, but too often is left sitting on the shelf. He started out in ag science and extension, and you see reflections of that all the way through his work. Chris has led work that's been picked up nationally, but it's always been grounded in what actually works for people on the ground. He's known for connecting the dots between policy, science, and real world realities that regional communities deal with every day. He's got little patience for people who love the planning but don't back the doing, which is why he's always made time for ideas that really shift the dial. Networking and bringing people and ideas together across sectors and across regions isn't just part of his work, it's the core of it. He's driven by the belief that regional Australia shouldn't be just surviving. It is a place where people genuinely want to live, work, and belong. And if that means stirring the pot now and then, he's more than happy to do it. And I personally deeply admire Chris as a leader because of that. His courage to put a flag in the sand and stay the course when things get tough is really obvious in the work that he's been doing lately. So let's get started. Let's hear from him. Welcome, Chris.
Hi, Wendy. Thanks for having us on, and hello, everyone else. All right, and Louise is running the slideshow, so thank you, Lou. And yes, on to the next slide, thanks. We're talking about the journey from consultation to commitment in farming country. If you just do yep, thank you. On to the next slide. All right, why the Wimmera? Why now? So, like a lot of parts of rural Australia, and I'm phrasing this as, I think we've got unique problems and challenges in the Wimmera Southern Mallee, but actually when you peel back the layers, I think it's similar across rural Australia. So I don't feel actually that unique at all, really. But I think some of the solutions are going to be very place-based and unique to our region. So what's the challenge? We've got $20 billion of infrastructure proposed through food processing, transmission, renewables and mining. And they all want to do it now, if possible. And we've got a at capacity sort of series of rural farming communities where the employment is basically everyone's fully employed, housing's at full capacity, and people don't feel a lot of flex in the system. Like it's not necessarily comfortable and numb. It's everything's working at full pace. So we've got that full employment, low housing supply. We're mainly small businesses, very few bigger businesses, which brings its own challenges, but also I think is what makes rural communities great. The agriculture sector has gone through a long period of a strong commodity returns. Climate stress is sharpening the sort of outlook, particularly in 2025. The Wimmera Southern Mallee land prices have grown in the last 20 years by 800%. And to give you a reference point, CPI has gone up by 67%, I think. So ag land prices, it's absolutely great, but it creates its own challenges. I think there's a good reason rural communities in our region have sort of had a lot of distrust to the change being presented to them, because I think a lot of business leaders and government leaders come in and say, we've got to change this now, we've got to change it fast. And they generally, don't change it for the better. But we also have a region that's aspiring to lead. So we're a region that does food, fibre, some energy, and we're coping with ageing roads, short housing supply and squeezed services. It's productive, multi-generational farming region. And we're just at the point in time where basically because government and corporate Australia are saying coexistence isn't optional, it's the only viable path. And that's being thrust upon us. And when that's thrust upon you, you're going to react in a certain way. So on to the next slide. All right, it's coming. So what did we do? I suppose as we started getting our mind around 3 or 4 years ago that the challenge was going to be really big in our region, I started working with people, and at the time, actually, Colin, who's going to be talking about his current experience, was actually working in with me, and we sort of started looking about what are the challenges, what are other regions gone through, and we sort of thought, well, the first thing to do, and at this stage Colin moved on, was we wanted to understand, can we get the companies together? Because I'm a big believer in collaboration, and I saw each company trying to do their own thing, and out of that was a lot of, I suppose, everything was always the lowest denominator. You'd hear grumbles in the community by the worst performer. I wanted to lift the tide of everyone. So I got all the various companies in the region together and some of the leading community members, and we had a sort of bit of a discussion to understand. There was a bit of a commitment to understand the value of collaboration. All the people in the room at the time said yes. So what we got is in January 2024, and that's when the photo was taken, a whole range of the companies involved in looking to develop projects in the region together, plus some community leaders, some local government people, and we just started to, I suppose, explain the community to the companies, give them some better understanding of where they're operating, and sort of started talking about how we can do things together. And the main shift was trying to move from doing things with communities rather than to them. And this is a sort of changing from, we're going to do some consultation with you, which was generally at you. And I wanted to change, and I think everyone in the room wanted to change that to where we're doing things with communities. Okay, on to the next slide. Out of that, as I say, it is all about commitment. We went through a series of workshops where the companies and the communities kept on turning up together to work through this as a joint exercise. It was excellently facilitated. Prue Cook from Nine Creeks was leading that with Amy Abraham. It was a really great series of workshops. The Energy Charter, who Amy was working for at the time, was really important partner in all of this. And we went through a collaboration framework, so how the companies could work together. And the first piece was companies had to trust one another, because it was going to go nowhere if they didn't trust one another. And trust takes time to build, just like companies are trying to understand that now with working with the communities. Companies with each other have to trust each other first before they're going to be trusted by anyone else. So we went through this series of workshops, developed a framework of how we work together, and by the end of June 2024, we got to where we got to, where, yes, we decided all the companies wanted to keep on going and make it happen to make this collaboration framework become real and do stuff. So on to the next slide. So as you probably gathered, I like doing stuff, not just talking about doing stuff. So out of it, I suppose what we do is we meet once a month. We've got working groups that have their own actions outside the regular meetings, and there's 4 working groups. One's looking at research and development, one's around fire safety, one's on workforce development and youth career paths, and one's on local energy constraints and opportunities. They're identified by the group in conjunction with community of what the 4 key issues they want to work with first. And those groups have to report back once a month of what they've done, not what they're going to do. It's more what actions have they taken, and that's the key piece. Knowing action takes time. Things don't happen overnight. We're all well women, but we all have to actually keep on moving it forward. So, and for me, that's sometimes I get distracted, and as I say, I sort of help with working group 1. Yeah, getting that group together every month is always really rewarding, except just before when you're due to have the meeting, you go, oh, damn, haven't got the group together yet. And that's the real world everyone lives in. We're all busy, get stuck in our own business, but at the moment, these groups are really working well. On to the next slide. Okay, so what are some of the other things we've developed out of the collaboration? This probably is one where I've probably taken most responsibility, and I think it's really important, and getting the companies on board, still getting there, but I think some of the companies are already committed to making this happen, which is really great. So what is a commitments register? If you think about it, each company generally issue some press releases when they first go public with a project. It might say we're going to employ so many, ever 100 people. We might have 27 apprentices, and we're going to do this and going to do that. And they're all sound great. The community has probably low belief in those press releases. And also they sort of don't know how to go. And if you go to most of the companies' websites where they have the projects, they generally have all these commitments on them without necessarily much thing. But for a community member, it's pretty hard to track through who's committed what, where, and then for the community, it's the cumulative impact is most of it. So what problem we're solving? As listed, we're trying to get companies to document their communities, document what commitments they're making. They're responsible for writing them. We have them on a central website, so it's easy for communities to track them, and we sort of report on them every 6 months or 12 months, whatever's suitable. And it sort of helps councils through their thing. So it's developing a register as listed there, and we're really focusing on the additionality. We're not interested in what you have to do by law or by regulation. We're interested in what additionality is. And I'm a big believer on you shouldn't get rounds of applause for just meeting your regulatory requirements. You have to do that. That's not a choice. I'm interested in making sure people get acknowledged for the extra bits they do, how they grow and become part of the community, which is what the additionality commitments are. And what does this help? It helps communities have an understanding of what's going on, builds reputational credibility and that trust with councils and communities, gives credit for that additionality, really recognises where you go above and beyond, and offers a region-wide structure to follow through across LGAs, because many of these projects are across LGAs. So next slide, thanks. But what are some of the hard lessons this commitments, not the commitments, what this collaboration is showing? And it is a work in progress. I think the hardest one, and I don't think everyone's got their mind around this, is you can't change the community. You can only change what you can do. And I think this is a lesson that every single person, no matter what you do in life, has to take on board. The only power you've got to change is yourself. You can't change anyone else. So look in the mirror and think about what you can do differently than the people you're dealing with, and in this case, the rural communities you want to work with. They may or may not choose to do something differently in reaction to what you do. But unless you do that, you won't get anywhere. You can't spin your way out of saying, oh, yeah, we're going to change the community views by spin. And I think some of the companies' comms teams always want to just put good news, but I can promise you it's not what builds trust. There is a level of, I suppose, cynicism in rural communities. The last 30 years has probably built that up. So you're not the first company in trying to say, oh, we'll just do good news in the rural community and that'll convince them, because they've been through it before. And generally what builds trust is farmers in rural communities want clarity, not spin. And as one farmer said when he was giving a presentation to at one of the workshops we were doing, in rural communities, it's all about respect. We don't have to like our neighbours, and often we don't, but we know we have to respect them. We have to say hi when we're at the mailbox together. And when the sheep jump the fence, we have to actually work together to make sure the mob splits back up and gets in the right thing. So it's not about people liking you, it's people respecting you. And I think that's an important take-home message, and a hard lesson that I think a lot of people in general find hard to take on board. And I'll just let you know what my goal was when I started this collaboration was every farmer could finish the sentence. Our community is better off because energy coexists with farming. I don't think actually anyone can answer that question yet well. We're closer to it, but until we can answer that question, I don't think this conflict that's going on in rural Australia will lessen, because we've got to be able to answer that question. I actually think it's a pretty simple question. I actually do think there's answers that can do it, but we've all got to get on board and actually think about how we answer that. Because unless we can say how a community is going to be better off, not in 20 years' time, but in 2 years' time, 3 years' time, because during the next 2 to 3 years, as these projects are built, there's going to be change. So that means there's going to be pain, because change and pain are interchangeable words. We've got to be able to answer that question. And at the moment, I don't think we're putting enough effort into trying to answer that. On to the next one. So what I tell others, get honest about the delivery risks. Communities already are. Once again, it's not about spin. Work regionally, not project by project. And I've got a couple of new words in there, comparable or co-opetition, which is basically you realise the people that are working in the same industry as you and probably neighbouring industries. So if you're working in energy, realise mining companies are actually your collaborators, food processing, are your collaborators, and work out how you can work with them, because a lot of the challenges that the rural communities are feeling is across industry. It's not siloed like you think everything is unique to energy. It's actually across the various different industries, because it's a place-based you're looking to work. Use tools that are neutral and visible, such as the commitments register, and don't outsource your trust. Own your engagement. Don't say, oh yeah, we've got a corporate company in to advise us. Oh, they're the ones that stuffed up, or they did a bad community engagement. You're responsible. Own it, because that's what's going to build your reputation. And I think the final slide. So just a couple of things. And we would be nominated for the Clean Energy Council Awards as a collaboration, Wimmera Southern Mallee collaboration. And just like to highlight, it's really great to get that recognition. And it is about bringing the energy sector, government and local leaders to work differently on energy transition. So working partnership grounded, and I think keyword is unfinished, but we're already changing how people show up and act together. It just doesn't need new infrastructure, it needs new behaviours if we want to leave a legacy. So over to you, Wendy.
Oh, Chris, as always, there's so much wisdom whenever I talk to you, and sometimes a little bit crazy, but today was all wisdom. And I love that. It's not just about changing infrastructure, it's about changing how we look at things. I've got tons of notes just from listening to you, and I've heard you a million times. I always love the way you present so clearly. And I encourage questions in the chat box, please, because Chris will join on the panel now, and we will throw to questions after we've heard from our next two panelists. So we might go straight over to them. Firstly, thank you so much for joining Chris on the virtual stage today, Sabiene and Colin. It's really wonderful to have you both here with us. I'll introduce you one at a time, then I'll throw to you with some questions, and then when we've all finished, we'll throw to the floor for questions. So I might start with you today, Sabiene. So I'd like to introduce everyone to Sabiene Heindl. Like Chris, most of you will know her. She's the CEO of the Energy Charter, and she has a proven track record for delivering transformational change, and she brings a wealth of experience from senior leadership roles in energy, telecommunications, media, and the legal sectors. She previously served in the CEO office at Energy Consumers Australia, and has consistently championed innovative, human-centred solutions. With a strong background as a corporate lawyer and a deep commitment to people-driven outcomes, Sabiene's passionate about shaping the future of energy through purpose-driven leadership and inspiring decision-making that creates meaningful impact for all. And I will note, many of you may not know, last year she was recognised internationally as the winner of the 2024 International Equality in Energy Transitions Woman of Distinction Award. So with that big introduction, let me hand over to you. Thank you so much for being with us today, Sabiene.
It's a pleasure, Wendy. And I want to start off by just really paying tribute to Chris's leadership. The work that Chris is doing in his community, and some of you on the line, of course, are involved in the collaboration. Congratulations to you too, as is Colin, of course, is really exemplary, and it's what we need in communities also. We've been doing some work with Kathy McGowan, who many of you will know is the original Teal, and Kathy really highlights the importance of having community leaders, and I think Chris is really exemplifying that in the work that he's doing. And let's make no bones about it, it's hard work. It's really hard work. And so when I remember being invited to the first workshop that Chris ran, where Chris had this crazy idea to get a whole group of businesses from the Wimmera Southern Mallee together, competitors in one room, who would have thought? And that was almost 18 months ago now, Chris. And I think we could feel that the trust was not there across the companies. And many of you will know that, your competitors, of course. And really what Chris has been leading is a trust building exercise across industry and with his community. But often, we have a situation where there's a lot of focus on community, and with good reasons. There's some great organisations that are doing terrific work in community. I think sometimes we forget that industry also needs some help in collaborating together. And without that, Without that sort of partnership, we are not going to be able to deliver the sort of benefits that we all want to see for regional communities through the energy transition.
So, Sabine, what lessons from the Wimmera experience do you think are most relevant to shaping stronger regional outcomes in other parts of Australia? Because there's many regions navigating this rapid energy development.
Wendy, we've just spent quite a bit of time trying to lift and shift Chris's model. And that's been a very interesting reflection point because, of course, there is no cookie cutter to these sort of approaches. What Chris has done is really unique, but don't freak out. Obviously, there is a framework here that can be followed. We've worked with Chris and other regional leaders, including in New South Wales and industry, to come up with what we're calling the Regional Energy Collaboration Framework, which will be launched shortly. Now, what that is really just a pathway to doing the sort of work that Chris is doing. It can be picked up by others, but in doing that co-design for the framework, it was really clear we need leaders in regional communities like Chris. We need a group of businesses that are also prepared to show leadership and show collaboration, which is what we have in the Wimmera Southern Mallee. And we need that commitment to working together and being able to show transparently in the way that Chris has explained what are the outcomes for those communities. And they may take time. This is a slower boil, I think. Then there are some quick wins, but it might take some time. And then we need to be really warts and all. Certainly at the start of the Energy Charter, we used to talk about the need for accountability, but a warts and all approach. So Chris has mentioned it's not all chest beating media releases. We've got to be honest. Some stuff is not working, and we can talk about the stuff that's not working, and we can also then commit to how we can do it better together in the future.
So from your perspective, with what you've learned, what can regional communities and local leaders, and you've emphasised the importance of local leaders, do to shape this kind of collaboration? And what we've talked about, the important role of industry. Is there anything that you'd like to highlight?
One of the interesting things is, Wendy, and I know a lot of the organisations on the call work with local council, which is such an important stakeholder. Where we've found Chris and some of the RDA organisations, so the Regional Development Authority Australian organisations, interesting, is it's an elevation above local councils with that regional development lens. And one of the takeouts for us has been, is there a unique role for regional development organisations? Not all of them are RDAs, Chris is not one, because it elevates it above, the issues that the local councils, of course, importantly need to be looking at, but really brings that very strong contemporary regional development lens to it. And there's been some great work released over the last couple of weeks by Community Power Agency on community benefits, really urging people to start thinking about how can we put all our money in one pot, not individual pots? How can we think beyond footy shirts and netball bibs and really come up with legacy items? And I think one of the learnings for us has been, is there an opportunity, a unique opportunity to partner with regional development organisations or leaders in regions or sub-regions and really elevate some of those conversations?
Now, Chris has popped his hand up.
Is he allowed to do that?
No. Of course he is.
Because with what's been saying, I fully agree with. But I think the thing we also don't want to forget is, and Martina asked a question in the chat, local councils are the primary organisation in these, but the important thing is to understand what the role of local councils is, and often they have a regulation role as well as a planning role, which has maybe a lot of it's been removed from them, so they're feeling wondering how they fit into the piece. So, but also understanding that the different stakeholders, the staff are very different to the councillors, and the councillors are people who probably didn't necessarily get into thinking they're going to be part of the major energy shift that's going on in their community. And a lot of the community haven't really been along for the journey and saying to the councillors, what are you going to do about it? And the councillors don't necessarily have the tools or the don't necessarily have the tools to handle the problem they've been asked to solve when they didn't create the problem in the first place. It is so I think we've got to work out how to make sure councils are still heavily involved, but I do think some of the leadership opportunities might be best from outside of local government too, because of just the constraints local governments have in what they can do.
Yeah, and Chris, as you know, I mean, obviously the role of local government is quite different in different jurisdictions. So we've seen in Queensland, they're taking a much stronger role. And my comments are certainly not to sideline local council. I think we absolutely understand and support that they need to be better supported. But at the same time, as you've just described, it can be also like quite challenging for them, as I'm sure many of the people on the call acknowledge. So this is just another angle, and there's no perfect here. Unfortunately, there is no silver bullet. I think it's about working out what works for the community in which you're operating.
Thank you so much, Sabiene, for giving us that broader picture of what's needed in this collaboration space. And what's really clear, which you're both talking about, it's a process, it's messy, and it's about getting people to the table and keeping them there when it is a bit messy, which might be a nice segue to you, Colin. So let's throw over to you, Colin. Please welcome Colin Kemp. He's a Warracknabeal local and a passionate regional engagement expert. He's the Community Engagement Manager at Westwind Energy, and he's been helping lead conversations about renewable development and transmission, actually, since 2023. With over 20 years' experience across community, local, and state government roles in economic development, Colin brings both a deep understanding of the region and a genuine commitment to its future, and he lives there as well. He's a local. So thanks for joining us today, Colin.
Good morning, Wendy. Good morning, everyone else. It's a pleasure to be here. And yeah,
So let's
some more
start
debate
local.
with Chris and Sabiene.
Yeah, let's start local. Can you paint a picture for everyone on the call about Warracknabeal, your community, and the renewable energy project that you're working on with Westwind? A bit of a quick picture.
So Warracknabeal is a small town in the Wimmera Southern Mallee, population of 2,400, approximately 300 kilometres to the northwest of Melbourne. Has got some renewable energy projects in and around the region that basically came in not under the radar, but really didn't have any contention when they came through. So Murrawara Wind Farm is 17 kilometres to the south with 99 turbines, and then the Kayata is southwest 52 kilometres away with 9 turbines. Really seeing a difference of change in mood set, I guess, since those projects came through and got in. So Westwind themselves, we're working on the Warracknabeal project, which is going to be up to 219 turbines in and around Warracknabeal, which is quite significant. We've got another project out at Wilka that's a little bit further behind that one. It's going to be another 96 turbines. And then one of the other projects, which is probably a little bit more interesting, is the Wires project, which is a private transmission line from Warracknabeal through to Bulgana. And as you would be aware, transmission projects aren't the most loved thing in and around anywhere really, or Victoria especially. And then in the background, we've also got multiple mineral sands mining projects that are intertwined with a lot of the land that the projects are also observing, as well as Chris highlighted that there's 10 different companies involved. With a lot of those other renewable energy projects are reasonably close. I think I've quoted at different times that I could potentially identify 1,000 turbines within a 150k radius of Warracknabeal if they were all likely to go ahead, which we know they won't. But that's the sort of pressure that I guess farmers and agricultural are feeling. Warracknabeal itself is just predominantly broadacre agriculture. It does rise and fall, I guess, with the seasons around us. That's why we actually look at the renewables and potentially mining as other great employment and income avenues for the region.
So you've given us a really good idea of the amount of change that's bringing, like the potential of 1,000 turbines, regardless of how many go ahead. That's what the locals are seeing and hearing and feeling. And you're not just working on this project, Colin, you live there, your wife's a teacher in town. What's it been like engaging in your own community on a project that, there's people who are going to really benefit and others who feel like they're going to wear the price of it without necessarily seeing the benefits? It's a bit contentious. What's that been like for you?
There is some real I guess, positives by being a local. So I think I moved to Warrnambool when I was 6 or 7, and I now actually live in Horsham, but oddly enough, travel back to Warrnambool and work, 4 or 5 days a week, just depending. So mum and dad still live here. As you said, my wife's a teacher here. The pluses are people find it really hard to be angry with me when they really don't like something, which is a bit of a plus. And I also, my personal mantra is that my job's not to change their mind. It's just to make sure they've got the facts. And that's really the hardest bit, is trying to beat a lot of this misinformation. And the internet's a marvelous thing. You can generally Google and come up with whatever mischief you want to believe in. There's that much misinformation there. So trying to actually get the facts out. And we've actually got a shop front here in the main street. We don't get a great deal of visitors, but it's very worthwhile when we do get them to come in, because you can actually sit and talk through, I guess, some of the things they've heard, and actually put forward the truth. We've got quite a good Q&A booklet now, just trying to dispel some of the rumours and myths. But there is definitely some pluses with being a local. But then all of a sudden, when you go out to the local pub for dinner and you look up and see one of the main aunties walk in, you both look at each other and go, "Oh, this could be interesting." Generally quite respectful, both say hello and then avoid each other for the rest of the evening. So some of those things are a little bit tricky. And Chris touched on a really important point earlier, is that we're industry's judged by the lowest common denominator. And so that's, I've found the collaboration really useful in trying to actually lift that. So because I've been involved in and around the region across the 5 local councils really in my previous roles, I will reach out to the other companies if I get feedback that one of them's not quite doing the right thing, and they're generally quite respectful, and I would expect them to do the same to me, because we have to work together. Yes, we're in competition, but we're not really. Like, we're trying to promote the broader industry. And then even it's not unusual for me to have phone calls or meetings with the mining companies as well, just to make sure that we are sharing the right information. And I like the couple of questions to do with local government. I actually have good relationships with them now, that they will reach out, or whether it be the CEO or the mayor or other councillors, if they've got a query, they'll reach out. And it's really important to get those relationships right. A lot of people will avoid going to local government too early or too soon, whereas I'm the opposite. I just have monthly catch-ups with a couple of the local councils. Sometimes they're short meetings, and other times we've got more to discuss. But you've got to keep the lines of communication open with all these different groups.
So, Colin, I really love something that you touched on there, and I think I'd like you just to explain a little further. You talked about holding each other accountable and supporting each other too, across the different organisations. As part of the collaboration, what's happened that the competitors are working collaboratively? Can you give us a little bit of a picture of what's happened there?
I think Chris touched on it earlier, that the first 1 or 2 times we met, everyone was polite, but there really wasn't that layer of trust. Whereas if we go back to the last monthly meeting we had, someone from Vic Grid come in and talk around the VTP, which was open for consultation. We had some fantastic discussion where a lot of the other proponents talked around their projects and different opportunities that they wouldn't have 18 months ago, because they see the value in actually working as one to try and get better outcomes for industry. That's, to actually just walk out of that meeting and you just think, that was just amazing, some of the information that was shared. Probably one of the trickier bits, and Chris touched on it before, that you can't outsource the trust building. So to have the people working for the companies, and where you can, being able to try and maintain them, because I know some of the projects locally, I've seen one, unfortunately, that's had 3 different community engagement people over the 18 months. So even the hosts and the aunties aren't sure who they're going to talk, where they're going to turn to, or who they talk to around some of their issues. And we've actually had some of our open days. We're actually fielding more questions about opposition projects than our own. So that's, again, that's where you've just got to focus and give them the right information, and where needed to actually give them the contact. So I had a mining company contact me from up closer to Swan Hill, and they said, look, we believe there's a renewable project that's going to impact our tenement. who do I need to talk to? So you just reach out and get those companies to link together, because we've all got to be better at it.
Just to put words in, can I just put some words in Colin's mouth, which he shared with me, and I'm sure he won't mind. But one comment Colin has made a couple of times to myself is there's the number of the team meetings where he's had to remind the rest of his team that, and Colin doesn't know what I'm going to say next, is every Sunday he has to go to Bunnings and shop. He doesn't want to get abused while he's shopping at the local Bunnings. So what the team does impacts his hours outside of his work life, and he just wants to be able to stay part of the community. I think having that message going back to the head office and getting them to realise that it's all about people is something that I think Colin does really well. And I think that sort of message, I think, resonates with most people, but it's often forgotten when people go, oh, we'll spin this and we'll do it. We'll get in touch with everyone in May, because they're all distracted then, which might be someone because they're all on the tractor. So that's a good time to do a launch. Everyone won't be thinking about it. And yeah, that's where having Colin's voice as understanding the local flows is so important.
Can I?
We really do need we really do need the sympathy or the empathy for the landholders we're trying to work with. Like, they've got busy periods, and my background is broadacre agricultural farm machinery. I'm a mechanic by trade, and then ended up managing some businesses till had a midlife crisis to get into economic development. And it's really important that we actually understand who we're dealing with, and no matter which region you're in, you need to understand what's important to them. So when are pressure times and pressure points, and when are times when they're going to have half an hour to invite you in and have that chat at the table that you really need to have, as opposed to making the phone call where they actually get abusive and just want you to go away. The transmission line is really a different field. We've got no compulsory acquisition, so we could really only get through by building good relationships. And it's slower than the company would like, but we're actually making some progress. So hopefully we're doing things right, because we don't tend to attract a great deal of anti-media attention.
Thank you, Colin. I'm going to, Sabiene want to make a comment, and then I'll come back to you, Colin, with one last question before we go to the floor. Sabiene, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I guess, it's really interesting, isn't it? Because the systems thinking approach that we're talking about, that everybody's tagged or tarred by the lowest common denominator, is not something that's new in this sector. The energy sector has known that for a long time, and I guess that was the genesis of the Energy Charter. When we did our social licence work many years ago with the ag sector, one of the key priority action items they wanted to see was more regional engagement people on the ground, so more Collins. But I think we have to be respectful of the fact that not every business is going to have that resource. So we are going to have people flying out from Barangaroo or wherever it might be. And I just want to assure people on the call that you can be the FIFO and still do a really good job, even if you're not passing the Bunnings test. And Colin, I'm sure you've seen some really good engagement people that aren't necessarily in the region, and that might be a reflection of where their project is up to. But you can still, when you are out there, do the right thing and be working with the Chris's and be working with the Collins. So I just wanted to make that point, Wendy, because I think we're still in the practical landscape that not everybody is going to be living in the regions to deliver these projects.
Which was actually our recent Empower podcast is all about working when you're not that local. How do you engage in a community when you're not that local?
Yep.
So, Colin, you get the last word.
I just think the most important thing to follow up for Sabine's comment, that's absolutely true. It's more about the relationships that you need to create and maintain.
Thank you, Colin. So, if you could wave a magic fairy wand, Colin, what would you love to see more of from engagement professionals? Two or three dot points.
Where you can do some, not sneaky research, do some research and work out who the important people who's got sway in the community, who are the ones you actually need to make sure you're engaging with, and do lean into the antis or the more troublesome ones, because you've got to front them at some stage, and just have compassion and passion about what you're doing. If you truly believe in the industry, soldier on and just fight the good fight, I guess. Chris touched on a really interesting thing, and I've pushed back with our company a couple of times. We do get lost in the glossy brochures, whereas sometimes you actually need to sit down and have the discussion around truly what's upsetting the people that have come to have the chat with you. And once you whittle some of those things down, you've actually slowly but surely turned people more in favour of what you're trying to do.
Thank you so much, Colin. So I'm going to throw to questions, and I see Steph from QFF had her hand up. So Steph, what's your question?
Yeah, I've really got a lot out of this session, and I wanted to just pick up, I think, something Chris said, and I do want to caveat by saying I had to do a restart, so I might have missed something that Sabiene had raised, but that's always the case. But you said something around addressing things, like having a regionality approach. Now, in Queensland here, we do have RESs, but they haven't necessarily been operationalised yet. Do you have, and you're in a unique position because you're in a development agency for a region, and so you've kind of got that, you're the centre point of bringing people together. Do you have any advice for regions where we haven't had a RES stand up, but there is a lot of activity occurring and there is that need for collaboration to begin? Is that necessarily something that government should be doing, or the LGA in the area, or because being an advocacy group, we don't have that. We've got members across Queensland, but we don't necessarily have that kind of. We're not the main stakeholder in an area, so to speak. Just keen to hear the panel's perspectives on that.
I'm happy to have a start, because actually Queensland is probably what inspired me to go down this path. I'll be very honest in that. So we took a group of community leaders up to the Surat Basin, which is Toowoomba, Dalby, Roma, and there was a research paper put out by Fiona Haslam-Mackenzie, who was from the mine closing CRC. Can't actually think of the thing, but if you look up Fiona Haslam-Mackenzie, and the paper's called Careful What You Wish For, which was about the first 5 years of the coal seam gas boom. And out of that was where TSB formed, which is a Toowoomba Surat Basin enterprise, which was basically a collaboration. Toowoomba Council, I think, allowed it to form and sort of encouraged it to form. So that was really good leadership at the time from Toowoomba Council. They had a couple of, I suppose, really powerful business leaders in the region, which helps. Not too many have the brothers that built the Toowoomba airport as leaders, but in the end, they still made it happen. And that sort of collaboration really opened my eyes up of how important it is to have that regional perspective. And then we see what Western Downs Council is doing now, which is, I think best practice in Australia. So, and they may say, they could do better, which I'm sure they would, but they're very honest. But I do think that's aspirational where everyone wants to get to. But in the end, it's just people coming together and going, we've got to try and make a difference. And that paper really emphasised the companies and communities have got to actually learn how to talk to each other. Government aren't going to get involved leading in this space. It's too messy for them. Let's be honest. It's too hard. But if the companies and communities come up with a united voice, then it's very easy for government to actually step up and play their part. But the messiness, there's not a lot of value for them to get involved in. So I think we just got to always look from the different perspectives. But I think that, Surat Basin is a really great example of how it can be done.
Thanks, Chris. Did anyone else want to respond?
I just want to respond. I think, we talked about the role of potentially of regional development organisations. I think they're really critical. But I also want to reinforce what I think is a responsibility on the businesses to support this good work. And by that, I mean resourcing it. Ultimately, it is in the interests of the businesses for Chris to do the good work that he is doing. And I think as a sector, we need to say, let's get a group of businesses together. Obviously, if you share those costs in supporting a Chris or whoever it might be, they're going to be much less than if one business was doing it alone. But we have to understand that most of the regional leaders are not going to be positioned financially and otherwise to do this work without the right sort of support from industry. And Chris has indicated it's unlikely that government are going to, fork up the funds for these sorts of things. So something else to consider, what's the business model? What's the business case that you can make within your business to genuinely support this sort of collaboration?
And just to follow on from that, I don't think we would have got anywhere without having the energy charter at the start and the engagement of the two facilitators which worked through the process. And that was Prue Cook, who was based locally in our community, really understood the regional context, but then Amy Abraham, who really understood the energy sector context, and having Amy supported by the energy charter really allowed this collaboration to happen, because we talk the right language. Regional communities don't understand the energy businesses particularly well, just like the energy businesses have shown they don't understand rural communities, but having both together really worked well. And that's why I really think over the coming months we will see more and more, and this is an advert for you, Sabiene, but more and more development businesses joining the energy charter, because it is better together to tackle these, and actually having an industry leader is so important to do this type of collaboration work.
So
I just add to the other thing, Wendy, is that what they've said is vitally important, and businesses are too busy just trying to get their projects up and running. But the connections and communications we now have, even outside the monthly meetings, Chris, when some of the businesses are striking issues and things, they will reach out. So it's really hard to quantify the financial benefit from being in the collaboration, but just the mental benefit for some of their staff to have other people they can reach out and talk to when they face some of the difficulties, and even sometimes we're having issues with similar people. So there is broader benefits than just financial outcome.
I've got a question that's a really long curly one, and you've got 2 minutes to answer it, because I do want what you want people to leave with comment. But there was a question, I think, from Bridget that I think, and a 2-minute answer is hard, but picking up on Chris's comment about how comms tend to be done in regions, I call it the shiny comms, where everything's amazing. I'd love to hear some thoughts on how comms and marketing can be done better in responding to regional community expectations and not falling into spin and BS.
I'm happy to start here. So my 1 minute
2
answer.
minutes, Chris.
1 minute answer is, realise that community is going to have a level of cynicism in it. It's had 30 years of change, which is probably on the surface led to worst experiences where the housing hasn't been invested in, the rural infrastructure hasn't been invested in. So when someone comes in and says this is going to make it all better for you, they're not going to believe you. They want to see the actions, and too much of the comms is about the North Star, which is great, but not about what we're going to do. And as I say, it's how are the rural communities and energy going to be better in 1 year's time, 2 years' time, in real time frames, is the question we've got to be able to answer. Not how it's going to be better off in 20 or 30 years' time, because no one believes it.
Can I link to your commitments register, which I hope you don't mind me sharing? Chris really wanted to call the promise register. We had a bit of a negotiation about that. But I think there's actually strength in numbers here. So we all get that individual businesses will want braggability. You're all dealing with your corporate affairs, good folk. But when you've got a group of businesses that can point to a commitments register and really tell a much broader story, then there's safety in that. We've done this, but we acknowledge that there are still gaps in the community. Or, oh my goodness, something went wrong, but here's the commitments that as a group of businesses we're going to see for the future. So the commitments register, I think, is a really critical part of this, and the independence that Chris is bringing to it through the Wimmera Southern Mallee Development is also really critical. I suspect, Chris, and Colin, you can jump in also, that the community members are going to feel much more trusting about something that Wimmera Southern Mallee puts up than individual businesses.
And
Well,
transparently too.
Putting something up, you actually need, the evidence to back it up. And, the community doesn't want to hear more spin. And, we all want to talk about the amount of jobs we're going to create and the community benefit. And even with the VTP coming out, we're not sure what that's going to look like once the government legislate it. But actually truly understanding what's more important to the community, and some of it is around the issues touched on housing, than the ongoing employment or education and health services. How can we actually lean in and support some of the legacy stuff? And sometimes we just need to do it without having to hang our shingle on it.
And collectively, Colin, it's a much better story, right? If you've got 10 businesses saying this is what we're collectively doing, it looks far more compelling to a community than one individual business doing the chest beating.
So I am going to jump in there because I want to make sure we finish on time. I have absolutely loved this session. I could talk to you guys all day. Before we throw to Westwind for their wrap up, though, I really do want what's the one thing you want people to tell people that they've got from today? What's their one takeaway from you? Chris Sounness, one thing.
You can only change yourself. Stop trying to change others.
Wow, that was succinct.
You sound surprised, Wendy.
Thank you. Sabiene, what's your one key takeaway?
I think we are better together, and I'd really encourage, businesses, I appreciate you're competitive, but put that to the side when we're talking about regional communities and look where you can really collaborate in the way that Chris has led.
Thank you, Sabiene. And Colin.
Mine's a little bit along the lines of Chris. I think you've got to be honest to yourself so that when you're actually out there dealing with people, you're happy to look them in the eye and understand they might not always like what you're going to tell them, but they will respect you for it and say good day to you next time. So, yeah, we've just all got to have the right attitude to move this forward, but working together is the most important thing we can do as an industry.
Thank you so much, Chris, Sabiene and Colin, for being, as always, really open, honest, warts and all with your conversation today. So as we come to the end of the session, I'd like to throw to one of our fantastic partners, WindLab, for a session wrap up. And I'd like to welcome Elliot Williamson-Bell, who's the Senior Manager of Community for WindLab, to the virtual podium to share his insights from the session. Come on down, Elliot.
Yeah, thanks very much, Wendy. And look, thank you, Chris, Sabiene, and Colin for such a fantastic session today. I have reams of notes, which I'm going to pull out as many gems as I can in the 2 minutes I've got. But I think the thing that's come through the most is the importance of authenticity and actual delivery when it comes to these projects. The idea of consultation, Christy mentioned being done at communities rather than with communities. Pretty management plans and press releases don't cut it. What you need to do is, if you're going to have a management plan with a commitment, you need to follow it through and have that transparency and accountability. And I love the register. I think that's something we're going to I'll be pitching internally probably in about 45 minutes for our own projects. But I think it's that, and I love that for a couple of reasons, because it holds companies accountable, but it also provides a point of where communities and people from around wherever can actually go and look at how these projects are benefiting. So it can actually, developers get a bit suspicious on being too transparent at times, but we have to embrace that if we are going to build the trust and we are going to build these kind of partnerships and collaborations. Sabiene, I just want to touch on the great work that the Energy Charter does in, as Chris mentioned, there's lessons from the Surat, there's lessons from the Wimmera, there's lessons from around Australia, and Energy Charter has that unique position to be able to draw that together in the regional collaboration framework. So, a real nod to you and the hard work of your team to do that. And Colin, it was great to be able to get the kind of lived experience of having that vested interest, not just as a developer, but also being in the community, being a part of it, and having been a part of it since you're a kid, and wanting to see that benefit. And it is something that we don't all have. That comes with pluses and minuses, and Bunnings trips become a bit more interesting. But I think that's, again, what you touched on of saying it's not about changing minds, it's about providing people with facts to make up their own decision. And I think that's something that's, important for all of us, is we've got to present those facts, good or bad, and let people recognize they will make their own choices and decisions. And yeah, so look, thank you so much. It's another great session. So thank you to Wendy, and we'll look forward to I might be touching base and stealing a few ideas that have popped up today. So.
Oh, thanks so much, Elliot. I look forward to our next discussion about where you're going to start talking to developers about a regional collaboration. The challenge is with you now. So
Yep.
thank you,
Noted. Thank you.
everyone, for joining us for this third Power Hour virtual forum for 2025. I hope that you've been as inspired and excited by the work that they've been doing in the Wimmera as I am. Every time I talk to those guys, I truly am amazed. And it's some of the stuff that you don't expect that's really powerful. And I know I saw Chris just popped up in the chat. He's got tons of information. If you want evidence base for the work you're doing in regional communities, Chris will have access to it. He has incredible broad amount of data and research that's done in Australia, as well as all his experience. So thank you for joining us to be part of that. And as I mentioned, we also do a podcast called Empower that's been supported by the Energy Charter. It's a really wonderful resource. And if you want to follow up on some of the discussion from today, I really encourage you to check out episode 2, which features Chris, where he talks about the opportunities and challenges of navigating change in his region. It is excellent and well worth checking out. So thank you again to all our speakers for their time today. Thank you to our partners, PowerLink and WindLab. Our next session is August 21st, and we're going to be exploring the topic, understanding and mitigating development impacts and what we can do to help our communities during that really challenging time of development. You'll receive an email with the link to this recording next week and also the link to register for the next one. Please feel free to share widely because it really is a resource that we want to see lots of people accessing over the next period of time. So thank you again and have a wonderful morning, everyone.